she bothered you? I interrupts her every 2 seconds anyway. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll open the public hearing to amend Chapter 168 to exempt local deliveries from weight limits and provide for parking restrictions. Stand for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, this public hearing is to discuss changes to the aforementioned Chapter 168, and the purpose is to exempt local deliveries and waste removal vehicles from weight limits and to clarify the method of imposing parking restrictions in the event of heavy snowfalls and other events. The local law, I believe, is in front of you. Yeah. Yep.
Do we know what local means? In that there are plenty of vehicles that go down my street, Washington Ave, and then elsewhere, that might say they were delivering locally, so I don't know.
Well, if you're going to lie about something, that
Right, but I
obviates
mean,
any-
does that mean that?
A local delivery.
If you were going up, Curry Road, Round Lake Road, up that way, is that a local delivery?
My
Going through Round
understanding
Lake?
is a local delivery is a delivery to a local person or business within
They have to use that street to get to the location, right?
that I don't know.
Okay.
The endpoint has to be within Round Lake, not just cutting through to avoid traffic.
Right, so local means Round Lake.
Yes.
Your point is if there was another way that they could get there by not using the weight limited roads.
Or they're going, they're going up to, Northway 11 and they're just taking that route.
Yeah, well, that would be not allowed. But for instance, if they were going to Victorian Landing by way of Washington Ave, that probably would be allowed.
Because that's still around.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Even though theoretically they could come off 87, it would be easier for them to do that. But
so could it say apply to Round Lake deliveries? As opposed
Well,
to
I think
local?
that's
Do you think that's
understood, that local
understood?
deliveries.
Okay.
And,
Because that's not an uncommon occurrence on my street.
oh, yeah, just using it as a cut through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so if a police officer pulled over somebody making a delivery, they would have to show that they were making a delivery within the vicinity, or otherwise they would be ticketed for being over limit.
Yes. And as far as, the temporary parking suspension, adding words to the effect that if the emergency is obvious, such as fire, heavy snowfall, or other visible causes, which to a reasonably prudent person would indicate the existence of an emergency, no notice shall be required. And there's 1 minute left for comments on this law before we start the next one. Which, do you have copies of that?
What's that?
Do you have copies of that?
Which one?
The 125-2. Littering? Littering, yeah.
Oops. One sheet. Could you drag
All
that
right,
back?
closing
Yep.
the public hearing to amend chapter 168 and opening the public hearing to amend section 125-2 of chapter 125 to provide for increased fines for violation of 125-1. Purpose of this is to increase fines for dumping and similar activities. Substantive change would delete.
Changes 50 to 250.
Currently, it is, first fine is $50, I believe.
Yes.
Changing it to a fine of $250 for the first, $500 for the second, $750 for the third offense.
So the restitution for cleanup costs is only if it's the third or more offense?
Let me check the punctuation.
Yeah. Fine, $750, or by imprisonment for 30 days, or by, or both such fine and imprisonment together with full restitution for cleanup costs for any subsequent offenses. I mean, I think
Your
if they made a real
question,
mess the first time around, I would think that they would have to pay for cleanup costs.
if I understand your question, it is the phrase "together with full restitution for cleanup costs." Does that apply to the first offense as well?
Yeah,
It does not.
It does
Or the
not.
second, only
right.
the third or more.
What's the thinking behind that?
I do not know. But
I
the
mean, if
only-
they put, 100 tires down there the first time around, and we figured out who it was, and it was difficult to get rid of those tires, that would, I think, be a cleanup cost. I'd rather see that for all violations myself.
I would agree.
Phrasing it might be interesting, but we could, I think that would be good.
You could just
Yes.
have a second paragraph saying all of the above offenses would be in addition, yeah.
Yeah.
So cross out "together with full restitution for cleanup costs." Start a new paragraph. Full restitution of for cleanup costs is required for each offense. Something like that.
Yes.
Required.
So we're going to end that with a period and say, new sentence that says full restitution for cleanup costs is required for any conviction of section 125-1.
That sounds good. Somebody had a hand up? Yes, ma'am.
I mean, you said you're putting up signs, correct?
Yes.
Okay, where? Like, do you know where? Because I can recommend one street, mine.
Yes.
Okay. Because my street's turning into Wood Road. What, 6 months ago I had a microwave, now I had a dishwasher. There's trash all over it. There's a wooden frame, like a window frame.
I drove by a couple hours ago, and there's not trash all over. There is some stuff there, but it's certainly not trash all over. Regarding the dishwasher, I talked to the sheriff about it, gave him the information. The sheriff tracked it down to a builder, a contractor in Schenectady. He contacted the contractor in Schenectady who had all the dishwashers that he had installed with their serial numbers, and he tracked it to a house in Clifton Park. So the sheriff went to the house in Clifton Park and asked the owner if he'd had any renovations in his house recently. And he said, no, we've only lived here 18 months, and the previous owner moved to the Philippines. So at that point,
Extradition possible?
and, you know, I don't, possibly, but I was impressed that the sheriff went that far to track it down, so that is encouraging. The signs have to have the proper fines on them, so that's why we haven't ordered any of the signs yet. But they will be going in on Hurley and probably some other places as well. Yes.
Who's enforcing these, like, fines?
Fines is code enforcement, or if it's a police ticket, Malta court.
Okay.
Any other comments on this before I close the public hearing? Okay, public hearing on 125-2 is closed, and we will move on to the regularly scheduled meeting and open with public comments. Superintendent report.
Hello, everybody. In the water, everything's been good. Tomorrow, we gotta go to water class, keep up on our contact hours for our water license. Also, I talked to Mike Harrington from Wellmont Engineering. I spoke with you, Gary, on that a little bit, and we'll be talking with Mike Moore on the grants there for the valves. We're discussing the roads that we're gonna be doing this year and possibly more. Mike Harrington's been talking with Kabricki, and a few other people that, the people that run the fund. I don't know, that's more with you. Well, I'll let you know what comes back on that, but the discussions have been started. Sewer, everything's been good. On the roads, met with Adam from Kabricki on the roads to be paved this year. And that, once again, goes back to the valves and locating which ones are bad and which ones need to be dug up so we can get them repaired before the roads are done. So we'll get back on that. Today, we got the water in the auditorium. We've been removing old wood and junk out of there also a few times since last time we met. Got the boat launch in today, docks, got the boat launch, shall I say. We're cleaning up still from cleanup day, going around the park, so if anybody sees some piles still out there, they're gonna be gotten to this week. Besides that, just breaking things down, getting ready for summer.
It's optimistic. Animal control?
Nothing major. We had one complaint on one neighbor, had a warning, which was resolved. Besides that, cat calls.
Cat calls as in calls about cats?
Calls on cats.
Or? Okay. Fire chief.
They, back to our regular month, 37 calls last month after a slow month the month before. The station work is continuing. It'll probably be another month or so before the outside is done. It's the one that gets cooperates so they can do the landscaping and the paving. Other than that, once a year, I need a resolution to go to parades throughout the year. This is usually the month we do it, so. Somebody just do that, and Kim will have all that.
Do you have the wording? Be it resolved that the Round Lake Village Board of Trustees approves the use of the fire trucks and equipment during parades within a reasonable distance from Clifton Park to Saratoga Springs. Resolved by
So moved.
second. Discussion?
Yes.
Yes. Veterans. Treasurer, no. Oh, that was done here. But we can do it now. Okay. Treasurer.
As usual, I provided everybody with a trial balance. It is as of today, it's current as of today. I did put the unrestricted fund balance on there as well. It's currently at about $812,000. Well, $812,512.81. And then I also gave everybody a copy of an update on the charitable gifts reserve withdrawals. You'll see that there was some activity this month. Dan Texta did order his equipment for the auditorium, and it came in. And then we do have some requests for resolutions. Would you like me to get started on those? The first one, fire protection equipment, A3410.2 and A3410.21. And also the fuel expense account, A3410.44, are low on funds. After consulting with Frank, the treasurer is requesting resolution to transfer $50,000 from the fire department capital reserve bank account to the general checking account to cover claims.
Motion?
So resolved. Do we have to, do
Second.
we separate?
And is this something we expected? I just didn't know what the short was about.
All right,
When
discussion?
we did the new trucks,
Yeah.
we took the money out at that time, and instead of putting it back in the accounts, we put it in capital reserve.
I remember now.
So now we're just moving it back over again.
Yeah.
Are we just doing the fire protection equipment?
Just the fire one,
Yeah,
right?
the first
Yes.
one.
Yes.
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 So with that, a resolution is needed for a budget amendment to appropriate the $50,000 in transfer funds as follows. And then I wrote down the entry. 44,000 of it would go into the fire protection equipment line, 5,000 into the equipment maintenance line, and then 1,000 into the fuel expense line.
So moved.
Well, is this first one,
The first one is appropriated fund balance.
yeah, how much?
That is 50,000, that's the total amount.
Oh, wait, did we vote on the first one?
Yeah.
we did.
Oh, I got
That's
it.
just from the
It was my
transfer.
math was wrong. The rest adds up to
Oh,
50. Gotcha, all right.
I'll second that. I don't think anybody seconded
No.
Discussion? Paul?
it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Okay, and then the last one, we talked about it a little bit at the budget hearing. I know Heidi wasn't here. So the 2019 auditorium season is beginning and funds are needed for marketing and performance costs. The current auditorium budget has been depleted. Adrian has requested an advance in funds that will be allocated to the auditorium in the upcoming budget. So I did attach her email. It just shows that she requested $3,500 from the auditorium contractual line and then $1,500 from the auditorium performers line. So the two options with that were we could appropriate fund balance now in the amount of $5,000 and then take it out of what we were going to allocate to the auditorium in the next budget. It's in the draft budget right now. Or we can just appropriate fund balance and leave the draft budget as is, and that would allow us to have funds left over for next season, so we don't have to repeat this, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that solution is a permanent solution.
That would fix
That
it.
would address our
That would get us on track.
overlapping seasons.
Yes,
So that we
So
always
that
have the beginning of the next season at the end of the last
yep,
budget.
to cover
The
the
season
marketing.
starts
and
earlier than
performance.
the.
Yep,
Yeah. I
Yeah.
understand.
yep.
That is
So-
what I would recommend.
With that being said, it'll be the second bullet point for the resolution.
Which is, okay.
Resolution to amend the current
Yep.
budget to appropriate fund balance,
So
no 5,000.
And I'll second.
Discussion?
Yes.
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 That's it for me now.
Willis? Nothing? Library? Oh, code, sorry. Peter?
We issued 2 new building permits for new homes in the village this week, one on Curry Road and one on George Avenue. So there'll be 2 new homes going up.
Where's the one?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
It's Jimmy's. Jimmy?
Oh, Jimmy.
Oh, Jim.
Jimmy's,
What's the other one?
and Miller.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Where's the second one? I know where Jimmy's is. Where's the other one?
Behind the blue house, across the street from the firehouse, behind it.
Oh, behind
Yeah.
And Bob?
Nothing out of order for the parking. I drive around, but it seems to be.
It's my kind of report. Library? Auditorium?
I actually have something. We're gonna do phase 2 of the auditorium beautification project financed by the Global Foundries Grant. And before we get it going, I want to make sure that everybody was in agreement on the plan, what the design's gonna be. Last year, we put the pavers down on the walkway leading up. Can you look on? This year, I'd like to put put a path up to where the tower is that holds the plaque, the landmark plaque, with a little wider space in front of it. I don't know if you can read my rough scrawl drawing here. The little bitty pinpoint dots near the road are my suggestion of the space that has been appropriated for parking, and people are always parking like right up. I hate that. So I'm trying to make it obvious that that's not a parking spot. So there'll be little planters on either side, a narrow path walking up, making it hopefully obvious that it's a walkway, not a driveway. The ground there is really degraded, so I'm hoping the DPW can bring some topsoil in and seed it at some point. So that's the plan. And if you have any
All right,
questions, I'm happy to answer them.
The grant covers this?
Sorry?
The grant, we've received the grant, right? It was
Correct.
5,000?
Yeah, but we can't do paving in the winter, so it's been sitting there.
Okay, but it covers the cost of this
It should.
design? Okay,
The walkway last year was
Yeah.
5,000.
yeah,
This is less
Square footage.
pavers, less complicated, it's not curvy. Maybe a little curvy.
Is this the path into the auditorium?
Yeah.
Auditorium is at the top.
So you're not gonna go directly from this path over to this end, this is from the street?
Correct. I think maybe in the future, I would like to see some benches or, something over there. I don't think there's enough money for that at this point. And at that time, perhaps like a little pavers between the new path and the brand new path. But I think putting a paver walkway in, like stepping stone path, putting a paver walkway in, the whole thing's gonna be pavers, it's just too much, so. And that round thing is a telephone pole. It's kind of, I don't want to over-clutter the area.
I wonder if people are gonna walk back and forth between the room.
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking like stepping stone path or something, maybe eventually. Also, there's little plants around the thing. I would like to buy some boxes to go plant around there, but that's kind of aspirational depending on how much this costs.
Well, you said eventually some benches, you mean like in this area by the square?
Well, yeah,
Front
it's
near
probably,
there.
I don't like benches just sitting there facing each other.
I know what
so-
you mean, but that general area, you didn't
Yes.
mean over here.
Correct. Okay.
looks good.
Also,
Yes?
yeah.
Yeah?
So, I think what's been really nice is the lovely foundation that's been built over the last couple of years to establish an invitation for people to come in to listen to music. And there's been some interesting programming, and last year it was kind of me taking over what Terry and Nicole did before, which was awesome. And it was a learning for me, but this year I've had people reach out to me, or to us, you know, that with interest to perform in the space on a variety of levels. And, you know, there's also curating like what's appropriate, what might be good to draw people in and all that. But I just think that there's just been a really nice momentum that's being built around people being interested in performing in the space with all kinds of, you know, in all kinds of ways. So everything that has been sort of secured so far is on the Facebook page and also on the Round Lake Auditorium website. So if anyone is interested, it is there.
Thank you. Under old business, comprehensive plan, I think we're still waiting on
Yeah, nothing to
a few
report.
things, nothing new. Same, water improvement project update, we're gonna start, after the budget's put to bed, we're gonna start hitting that pretty hard, starting next month. Start to look at some options and start winnowing down our decisions. Siren update, survey update. We, as between March 31st and yesterday, when I did a tally, there were 95 online responses and 45 paper responses. I summarized the priorities, the village priorities that people had, and I put some 10, 15 copies out there, and we can get you more. If you're interested, you can stop by for a copy. The, not surprisingly, the top concern or comment was the conditions of the streets and curbs, with 25 comments. Speeding and stop signs with 20 comments, drinking water with 15, preserving historic and natural historic nature of the village and architectural standards 12, walkability, recreational area maintenance 12, trees 11, parking 11, and the rest were all in single digit. Interesting that the fire department sign got a total of 1 comment. So that's apparently not a priority.
What was your breakdown of the, keep the siren?
Oh, that's next. The breakdown of the siren was keep the siren as is, 59%, restrict 24, and eliminate 17. So keep 59% and restrict or eliminate 41%. So there's no easy answer to this. And I don't know, does the board wish to keep collecting data? We had 140 respondents.
Well, you got a couple more, so, tonight, so, I dropped a couple off.
Yeah, there were 5 or 6 in the box today. I haven't counted, so
So we
I mean,
just cut it off at
keep
some time
waiting.
We
before
started
that?
collecting March 31st.
March 31st, I started collecting
For
online.
the end of the month.
Yeah, and then we'll have a report for the May meeting.
the May
and
meeting,
We
yeah.
can
Vote them.
I think that would be.
I had a question, do you have any breakdown, or will you be doing a breakdown of where people live? Like, I'm interested
I'm
in.
glad you asked.
I know we asked for it.
Overall, let's call it roughly 60-40 for argument, to keep it simple. 60 keep, 40 either restrict or eliminate. I pulled out all the responses from Victorian Landing, New York Ave, and Curry, west of Washington, which I figured would be the most affected. And the breakdown was just about the same. 59% keep, 41% restrict, eliminate, which I have to admit surprised me. So there was really no substantial difference.
So we we let the stuff come in, we gather some final numbers, and we beat the crap out of this next month.
Well, I'd like to get a sense of what our overall plan is, so how long people have to wait, because it's going on a long time.
I think the end of the month is reasonable, and then address it at the next meeting.
Were we talking about making a decision by the next meeting?
Oh, yeah.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
'Cause it's,
Yeah. I mean, for me, I mean, I'm equally as interested in finding out what people think the village, their priorities for the village are.
Oh, yeah, I know that, right.
I mean, that's, I mean, certainly going to direct, you know, my efforts and energies, because I can get lost in my own projects that I like, but having this as a guiding document, I think, helps.
Although it's, right.
So, end of month, we're saying?
Sure.
Should we post a notice letting people know?
All over.
All over.
April
Last
30th chance.
chance.
is the cutoff. If you haven't got your surveys in yet, please put them in.
Well, it's interesting, some people put, Peter and Mew Sheridan. They didn't, but, so that, like, for two people. So what do you do with that? Is that, yeah. So,
You could have copy pasted, counted it twice.
yeah. I mean, so,
How do they agree? That's the big question.
I don't, hey, really, that's why I was very suspicious of it. Online respondents were 2-to-1 over paper, and 3 times more likely to make comments, because online you had to make a comment. It was required. Although you could put in no comment if you didn't want to, but
Hit your space bar, I think, to test it.
just put a character in there and that tricks it. All right, next. Condition of lake, still waiting on consolidated funding applications to open up. And then we'll start that process. 26 Albany Ave. They're
Should
working
go
along.
for sale within 2 months.
Yeah.
How's the project going of the work?
It's,
Looks pretty nice.
Yeah, it does.
yeah, it's nice.
How much more to go? I haven't been over
It's
there.
all sheet rock, taped and spackled. They got some painting to do inside, some
Oh, they're
exterior siding to do,
All right.
Front porch.
front porch. It's coming along.
All set.
All right, new business. Greek Fest. You put that out? Greek Fest?
He wants to have it on May 5th and inspiration from the village.
To close the street?
This is the street.
Do you want the?
George didn't really bring in any information, he just came in about the Greek Fest.
I can't totally speak on it
Okay.
on behalf, but what I know is that he was hoping to have the village tent and some tables and chairs and do a potluck. He would do what he normally does, which is grilling, you know, in between our driveway and, you know, and Becky's house on the other side. But he was hoping that it would sort of be a village event with big tent, tables and chairs set up. That's what I know. I'm not the boss of him.
Yeah, yeah.
Is this the 4th
But
or the?
I know that he was waiting for today for there to be some resolve about that ask, so.
He was in,
Sunday.
one day I was in,
It's a Sunday.
he came in one day and Kim and I were there and he was asking for the tent. And he didn't ask for the road to be closed, but he asked for the tent. And permission to use the
Permission to
floor.
use the grounds.
Yeah.
I don't think he asked to close the road, but we just kind
Yeah.
of,
Well,
Play in the
I'd be
road,
much more
reactive.
comfortable with just closing the road.
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
finding
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
tent. That's not a
But
business that
I
we should be
didn't know
getting
that-
into.
Yeah, I didn't know what our policy was about using village tents or.
It's a lot to set it up.
It is a lot to set it up, and it's not really a village-sponsored event.
Right.
So it's,
Right, and.
And I don't think we lend the tent out to anybody, do we?
Do we have any,
No.
if we know there's an event someone's holding that it's okay, and we want to close the street, that's one thing. Do we have any real liability issues or not? We have the Fun Beer Fridays go on, there's a similarity with those. So that, I mean, there's probably more people at this than at, just because there's so many Fun Beer Fridays that they tend to, are we facing any that we've never talked about, liability?
not if we close the street.
Yeah.
And his permission to use the grounds.
Yeah.
I mean,
People have
villages routinely
Fourth of
close
July
streets for
parties,
block parties,
Memorial
things
Days in the
like that.
parks, that's really not a problem, right? We have no problem issuing it. Yeah, I'd be concerned at this point of making it a sponsored event, but
Yeah, I don't wanna go
Unless-
there. I don't wanna go there.
not yet, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean, the attorney's gone, but I think we do have a blanket
I
liability.
think he ran away
cover.
screaming.
Yeah, but I'm not sure,
Want to get some
we're not sponsoring this,
No.
so it's like
I think he's
anybody-
asking us to
So,
go down that road. I think that's kind of where he's going with it, right? He wants to, no?
I think he,
He wants
he's
permission.
not here, I'm sorry, but as close as I can sort of share the communication is that he feels like it's a village event.
Sure.
There's no ticket, you know, he doesn't ask for money for it. It's his 4th year doing this. People come out, they enjoy it, there's music, there's dancing, so, you know, I guess I would ask the question, what would he need to do? And it's now like 2 weeks from now, so I don't know what that would mean, but what would it mean for it to be a village event and how could he take advantage of that, so.
personally, I think, first of all, it's, I think, too close to now to do it this year. And I think it would require maybe a group of people getting together that he could, my own feelings, I don't know what the legality is, and coming up with a proposal for some kind of event, whether it's Greek or it's, you know, all different cultures or what.
Well, I think he had asked before to use the park, and if it was open to everyone, then we said you can use the park, and people can put stuff
Yeah.
up in the park. We were still not sponsoring it, but
Right.
use of the park because it is essentially a,
It's public space.
yeah, but, and this was like a relatively open
Yeah, that's not
village
what I-
event.
yeah.
That's not the same as sponsoring it, which I don't know
Right.
that he's asking for that.
I can't answer that.
Putting up a tent's a big
Tent's a big
expense.
deal.
Well, I realize that. That's a whole different thing, I think, to have a sponsored event. I'm not saying we
It's
shouldn't do
expensive.
that, but down the
Takes
road,
time.
right.
To put it up and take it back down.
Well, he never asked for a sponsorship, he asked permission.
Yeah, permission to use the land.
And there's a distinction.
Yeah.
And Tom's gone, but permission to use the park, well, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
We've had other parties in the
You know,
park.
people have parties in the park, okay,
Yeah.
you know.
I know.
But
it's the
to
4th of
use
July.
the tent
Yeah, that's
was,
different.
that was a new thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't think we,
I don't think we're prepared at this point to do that unless we came up with a policy and maybe there was a, you know, like it was rented out too for private. We've never really broached that if somebody wants to. I'm not saying we should, I'm just saying that's a.
That's getting into competition with private.
we got guys who have to come and do
Yeah.
it, and, you know. I don't think we give him the tent.
No, not this year, no.
That was one of his questions, that was one of his questions.
I think it's a good public safety policy to close the street, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That I would have no problem with, because there's so many other streets around with it.
So you wanna I'll make a motion, we close the street on that day.
Do you need a motion for that?
Do we need a motion?
Well, John or I can close the street whenever we want, but
Yeah, okay, well.
it doesn't
We
hurt
would need a motion.
to have a record of it.
All right, well, I'll make a motion, we
I'll
close the
second.
street. Yeah.
That's 5/5 from
And to use the grounds.
And to use the grounds.
12 to,
Or at a
12 to
time-
5.
Yeah. Or time for you to determine. I think we could resolve with the time to be determined by you guys. You could talk to them.
Adrian?
Gary, did you just say 12 to 5?
I made that up.
Oh.
It's in
From
the
what I
evening,
remember
though.
last
Because
year.
if he
Day of the week.
did it like in previous years, I mean, tents got sometimes set up the night before, like, like neighbors' tents, chairs, and whatever brought over. It starts at 1, and then, you know, the cleanup might come after.
Yeah, but the dancing,
Monday morning.
dancing in the streets doesn't happen
Exactly.
until,
So I'm just saying, you.
2 or
you-
3
you
years,
set a-
so.
You set a time frame, so I don't know if that gets written in as like code or something, but.
I think this is just
I
for
mean,
the street close.
Realistically,
Street
you know,
close.
if the tent is not gonna be the thing, then the usage of the space should be like 24 hours.
But we're just talking about the street
I'm talking about the
closure.
park.
No, we're talking about when
We're
to
just
close the
talking-
street.
Oh, the street, okay, then, sorry. Oops.
And you said it starts at 1 there?
Yeah, so 12 to 5 would be fine.
No, I just wanted to make sure, like if the park usage, 24 hours, like the street thing.
Well, subject to noise ordinance, of course, but
This is a Sunday.
Has anyone complained?
subject to noise ordinance, it's not a matter of if people complain or not.
So close the street at a time to be determined, whether.
At noon or 1, yeah. Yeah, I think we do it at time to be determined
Yeah,
by the mayor
and John.
and John, yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Paul, Matt.
Yes.
Yes. And, do you have the list of the fire chiefs? Oh. A resolution to, be it resolved that the Round Lake Village Board of Trustees appoints Frank Mazza as fire chief, Ed Cameron as first assistant chief, and Robert Gizzi as second assistant chief. Congratulations. Someone resign?
So moved.
We have a second discussion? Paul?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Did you know about that, Fred?
He wasn't at the meeting, that's what happened.
Yeah, I wasn't there.
All right, permission to use grounds, Memorial Day, Antiques Festival, and markets. All right, whereas Women's Round Lake Improvement Society, Worless, wishes to license the use of land owned by the village, to wit Roe Park, South Park Lawn, Auditorium Lawn, Burlington Ave between 2nd and Fletcher Ave, and peripheral adjacent parkland, henceforth the subject premises, for 2 periods of approximately 2.5 days each in June and August of 2019, in order to conduct events named Round Lake Antiques Festival and Markets at Round Lake, markets at Round Lake. Both community events open to the general public, which may include live music, the sale of merchandise, the sale of food, beverages, including alcohol to the extent permitted by the law, and other items on a retail basis, the net proceeds of which will be paid over to or retained by Worless, a New York State not-for-profit corporation. And whereas the Board of Trustees of the village finds that these events are an appropriate use of parkland, and that the events will materially enhance the quality of life for residents of the village and surrounding communities and constitute a public benefit, it is therefore resolved that the Village of Round Lake Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the mayor to enter into a license agreement or agreements with Worless for the use of the subject premises as set forth above in a form approved by the village attorney and found by him or her to be substantially similar to the license agreement between the parties for the events of the same name held last year.
Now, is that for the 2 events that in here, or is that also on
It
one
was.
day? 2 big.
Yeah, that was for markets and antiques festival.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. And for Memorial Day, be it resolved that the Round Lake Village Board of Trustees authorizes the closure of Burlington Ave on Monday, May 27th for Memorial Day celebration. Round Lake Auditorium is a rain day backup. And the use of the village tents, tables, and chairs, period. Resolved, resolution.
So is it.
Second,
Yep.
discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Adopt budget. The only 2 changes I made since the last time was up the stipend to $1,500 and added the $1,000 to the tree for the conservation fund for trees, and we renamed the shade trees. We kept that as the overarching category, but underneath the line item, we changed it to tree maintenance. Thank you.
You said you added 1,000, wasn't there 1,000 there already? Does it make it 2,000?
No, no, it was 0 before.
The
Maybe I
1,000
did-
for the trees?
Had I added that before?
Yeah, it was already in
It
there.
was in
Okay.
there,
All
so you're
right.
not
Never
adding
mind.
another 1,000.
Right, that's correct. So that would be the only change then.
So I thought we were gonna set up a couple of dedicated funds for like DPW equipment and maybe auditorium.
I didn't get those written.
Okay.
Didn't get those.
Okay.
They're sitting on my desk waiting for what's the next.
So, I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out how we're gonna make that work. We have, are we gonna use money from the?
Fund balance,
appropriated?
yeah,
Okay.
which is kind of big now.
That's big, yeah, and I was wondering, I can't remember what the controller recommends for, there's a formula.
3 months operating.
3 months
expenses.
of the amount to be raised by taxes, 3 months of that, right?
3 months of your operating expenses. I mean, you
operating.
figure out what you spend, look over a year, what do you spend every month?
So that's, for us, that's probably a couple $100,000, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, fund balance is high.
So we've got some money, we can start looking at our water and taxes, some relief there. Next year, I'll tell you, see how on the front page where it says
Yeah,
appropriated
yeah.
balance 0, it's not going to say that next year.
Yeah, I get it, yeah. And just a couple other questions I had on that. How many units on our water system these days?
306.
360.
About 360? Okay. I was trying to get a handle on it because some of my information is dated, like the last numbers I had was,
Well, it's kind of tricky, because when you say units, do you mean a hookup? For example?
whoever gets a bill.
But some of them get 6 flat rates and some get
Yeah,
2
yeah,
flat
yeah,
rates,
yeah.
so it's not really as clear cut as it would appear.
Because I was just trying to factor in the new, like, back in 17, 18, we had, which is only 2 budget years ago, we had 343 on water and 287 on the sewer. And I didn't know, now we have all this new stuff, a couple new houses inside and a bunch on the periphery, and how that changed the number of people.
I think total water we have, don't quote me on, but like between 365 and 370.
Okay, that makes sense.
Around there.
You know about sewer?
I don't.
Again.
I don't, I have to, check it out.
Okay, but it would probably correlate.
No.
So-
Not necessarily, because Griffin's Ridge doesn't.
Oh, that's right.
They're on
Yeah,
county.
they're on county. Yes, okay. All right. Okay. All right, yeah, I just was looking for, and then I think the only other thing, so you've answered the question about the unappropriated fund balance. I think it's big. And I just hope that in the next couple months, we can spend some of that or earmark some of that for the future. Other than that, I don't know. The other thing, I'm still a little skittish about the reducing the highway snow removal thing. Not that I think we need more snow removal. Quite the opposite, we might need less.
That's an artifact of how we apportion salaries in our budget.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly, they don't spend 35% of the
So
time
that
in
time,
plowing
I
snow.
know.
But, and that's something we have to, Johnny and I have to figure out. I mean, how much time do they actually spend working on roads, on parks, on snow plowing, and get a more accurate reading? Because that's silly. 35%
Yeah.
struck me when I broke the numbers down. That just struck me as crazy.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the other thing on the unappropriated fund balance too, and I know I drove down Kavanaugh. I made the mistake of driving down Kavanaugh Avenue the other day from George over by Rigney's. I mean, that is unbelievable. So I invite anybody on the board to drive down Kavanaugh.
I do, yeah.
That's unbelievable. Some of those potholes are huge. And I think we ought to, if we have such a big unappropriated fund balance, we ought to figure out a way to, even in short stretches, it doesn't have to be a total makeover. Some of these streets, short stretches of roads are just terrible.
A lot of them are, like right over on Lake and stuff are due to be repaved, but gotta fix the valves.
I know, I know.
And then over where you're talking, are you running over the gas valves?
Yeah,
or
that's a
power?
gas valve, because
They're-
I used to twist my ankle on that pothole.
They're gas valves.
There's one right after you,
Right at the
north
intersection.
of Saratoga.
The gas
It's,
valve.
Yeah.
it's like a thing, it's like a real pot.
Yeah, there's a gas valve at the bottom of that
There's a
hole.
gas valve.
So, I mean, yes, we have to do something about that.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we have data supporting that.
Yeah, it's be a priority. Yeah.
Are we, do we expect to get virtually all potholes repaired in the
What's
near?
that?
Are all potholes gonna get repaired? What
Well,
do
what
we
we've
leave?
been doing is taking care of the worst ones, and then on some of them, like right over here on the lake, like I said, taking care of the worst ones, but the plan is to tear that whole road up this year. So I really
This
don't want to
year.
dump a lot of money into it.
No, I'm thinking of any roads that aren't, I haven't seen a plan, do we know what roads are getting redone? this
Yeah, I
year?
got a map down at the garage with, we went through Ricky, and that's the whole, west side from Burlington over, basically. And then a portion of Asbury. I'd have to bring it in so you can see.
Yeah, I'll
it.
make a copy of that, we can post it.
And once again,
The west Burlington over toward the, yeah, toward the Zinnies restaurant from
yeah,
Burlington.
right from Lake, Burlington, everything right straight down to.
When, are the asphalt plants open now?
I'm not exactly sure yet.
But we could get hot patches.
Yeah.
It's just that I was thinking of any road that doesn't, some roads were redone last year. Some were, was that a whole quadrant that was redone? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is this considered a quadrant or more than a?
It's
oh,
not
whatever.
considered, it's just a
But then there
section.
are potholes appearing in other places that I don't think would be on your map, just because I hit one.
Right, and
every
they'll
time I
be
go out.
taken care of. Right.
Those would get regular pothole fixes.
Yeah.
in the-
Okay.
Yeah, and it might be, Tom's suggestion is a good one, it might be
I-
worth,
Which is what?
Putting some of the unappropriated fund balance into
road
roads.
repair.
Yeah.
Seems it's such a high priority for the
And
village.
it's just like, again, it wouldn't be, you know, a whole stretch.
Right.
You know, you might find 200 feet or.
Yeah, what you did on Washington, you squared it out,
Mm-hmm.
made a big rectangle and filled that in, that was.
That's held up.
Yeah, there'll be more of that going on, but I don't wanna do that to a road that's on the list.
Right.
Right, sure, yeah.
But then in the areas where the gas valve, that's a major problem there, and we're gonna have to hook up with the gas company and ask them to come out and change their elevations, which, after talking with several people, the construction guys and other highway departments, is not the easiest thing in the world to do, but maybe we can keep.
Well, I don't want to incur liability for a hole that size as a village, and that's certainly something.
Okay, thank you.
So, motion to accept?
Shouldn't this be a resolution
To pass?
to pass? I assume that's the case, so I'll make the motion to adopt
Okay.
Not.
the 2019-2020 village budget as presented in this incarnation that we got tonight.
Second,
I'll second.
discussion? Holden?
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes.
Paul?
Yeah.
Yes.
Gary?
Yeah.
Yeah. Resolve all of those.
I guess the two of them, right, not the litter? Or can we make that change?
Oh, already done.
Good.
Pass those three down.
Oh,
We probably should do number 2 first, which is weight limits.
Oh.
This is littering.
So this is the old one right here?
Oh, is it changed?
Yeah, this is, he reprinted them, that's why he ran away.
I can't tell what you have a time on it or a date.
It's,
Two,
Get so many things.
it's the one that
We don't have any
says,
changes to number two.
period. Full
that is
rest.
correct.
That's, this is the new one,
Yeah.
yeah.
On the back. What about section 2, 3, 4, and 5? Are they,
Those are all the same.
they're the same.
Is this, yeah,
Littering.
so we can pass this with the
Yes.
correction? Yeah.
And this is not different from what we discussed before, correct?
Which one are you looking at?
Number 2, local law number 2.
Oh, I'm looking for number 3, so we're at number 2.
There's two.
There we go.
So do we need a motion to pass the
Oh, wait, this is,
weight limit law first? Is that what we're looking at?
Is that how we're doing it?
Okay, so 2 is what it was on the, what we were looking at earlier.
And that's weight,
Correct.
it's weight limits and snow emergency as one. So it's one resolution to, yeah. So I make a resolution to pass local law number 2 as presented here.
Can you speak up a little? I'm having a hard time.
okay,
Second.
all right.
So I just said I was making a resolution to pass local law number 2 as presented here, which is to do with the weight limits for local vehicles and for the alteration to the emergency parking.
All right, so just to be clear, what we're changing here is right now, the
But do we have a
signs.
second?
Oh, just one second.
Okay, Tom, second? Okay, discussion, sorry.
So, right now, there's a weight limit, and what it doesn't say is that if local deliveries can exceed that. So that's what we need to do.
Yes.
So that's fine. So, just to be clear, that will allow a bigger truck to make a delivery and leave, but not come through. And the other one is what we had, a resolution to declare snow emergency parking, and that's new. And there's no other changes in here, right?
Correct.
Right, because I was sneaking through. All right.
Okay, Cole?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
So then,
Now we're ready.
so then I'll make a resolution to adopt local law number 3, which is increasing the fines for littering within the village as presented here.
And requiring restitution
Yes.
for any violation
Yes.
of this section.
For cleanup costs, okay. You're
All
gonna
right,
make a
Question?
The, for all violations of 125-1, is it 125-1 or 125-2?
There are only 2 sections to chapter 125. Number 1 is the substantive section, which says thou shalt not. And so that's what would be violated.
Oh, I
And
see.
Section
I got you.
125-2 is the penalty section.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
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 Yes. Correspondence? All right, we did that. From Stewart Shop. Dear Kim Sheridan, Doug Moore, we are pleased to inform you that Stewart's Holiday Match is donating $1,000 for the village of Round Lake. Stewart's has collected and matched donations in our shops from Thanksgiving until Christmas since 1986. We want you to know that half of the enclosed check comes from our customers. Perhaps that includes you. We should send them a thank you.
Have we received that before?
Every year.
Yeah, I thought.
More than 1,800 organizations requested over $4 million in support, while we had $2.06 million to donate. Thank you, Stuart. And from Doug Harple, I'm writing to submit my resignation from the planning board effective immediately. And thank you, Mr. Harple, for your years of service to the village. Okay, a donation from Dan and Pam O'Rourke to the auditorium in memory of our dear friend Joe Wrigley. Approval of minutes for March 26th, was it?
Yep.
Yeah. Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Approval of abstract.
What's the abstract?
$30,244.59.
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Discussion?
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Village Attorney?
We are not being sued, nor are we suing anyone right now.
And we know.
Village Mayor, nothing at this time. Village Trustees?
I was asked to just bring up two minor items for either an explanation or a resident asked me about the mess that's in the lot at Saratoga and Burlington, the Blue House.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a big pile of debris on one end of it, and the place just looks like,
I know we've been in court with them.
for status, can I get an update on where we are with that?
We have a date for them to come in and remove trees and to cut the grass, clean up the property.
What's the
The
date?
issue really is water. The whole lot is flooded. I don't know if there's some way the village or some, the water is stagnant there, it has to run to the corner.
Right.
It's not. I don't know whether when they decided to put a driveway, parked a car in front of the house, they filled in a ditch or whatever, but the water just gets hung up there. and
I
floods.
think the mess he's talking about is on the,
Is on the Clark Avenue
Oh,
on the
side.
Clark
yeah.
Ave side.
The whole
Yeah,
thing.
we'll make, that will be part of his cleanup. I mean, he's gotta come in there and cut the,
When's he got to do
I
that?
think we have a date set. They
But
were
he-
there
he-
looking at it.
he has been cited and he
Yeah.
had a court date and.
It was pretty
Yes.
cooperative. We've got another date by which we respond to the court, but by then the tree should have been coming down. They showed us proof that they hired the tree surgeon and,
And I think they had a date picked, so, it's close.
yeah, a weather permitting date.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Now, the water on the lot, is that the fault of the homeowner, or is that just the wetness of the soil? I mean, should we be putting in a storm drain there?
That's,
It's his property, and it's, I think it's his responsibility to build that up.
One of the things they did that certainly didn't help the situation is when they put the driveway in, they actually covered over one of the storm drains there, and especially the one where the driveway is built up, keeps the water from running from the backyard to the front yard so it can run down and drain the property
Is it the current owner that did that, or a prior owner?
No.
prior, probably a couple hours ago.
Well, the lot's a sponge. I mean, it really.
It's a low area to
It's
begin
low,
with, it really
yeah.
is.
And I don't know.
That certainly did not help out the situation, now it holds the water.
I mean, if he ever does anything there, the water's gotta, drainage has gotta be mitigated.
Right.
Because it does flood over.
I did talk to him about that, and he talked about filling in the basement.
Filling it in,
Yeah.
it's already
filled.
filled in.
But the water's running over the road, isn't it? At
Not right
times?
now.
Not right
No,
now, but it
not right
does.
now, but
It
it
does.
did in the winter and
Yeah,
caused
when it
an ice
freezes.
problem.
Yep.
So again, why isn't it our obligation to take care of that drainage problem?
We have an engineer look at it, it would be nice to get some drainage over there, I really don't see a cheap solution there, though. But the water, one of the problems is the water from the neighbors pump out their water, and the other neighbor pumps out their water, and both their waters run to their house, and it's just the cycle.
And the people who are pumping out their water, do they have a place to pump it? Do they have a storm drain available?
You know,
Well, I'm not gonna ask who they are, but they gotta be my neighbors. I don't know who pumps in directly into the back.
well, it's not that they pump into his yard, they pump onto theirs, but, you know, water travels. And the problem is his area is a low area. It might be worth having an engineer look over there and see if you can get that. It'd be nice to go down Saratoga Avenue, but I believe that's gonna be a major expense. And an alternative may be going down Burlington. And I would recommend, if you're going to look into putting drainage there, to have the engineer to look at it to begin with and weigh out your options.
Well, it sounds like it's unsafe and unworkable as it is. Something's got to be done. It's not the fault of the current homeowner, and the surrounding homeowners, we can't cite them for what they're doing because they're not breaking any laws by pumping out their own easement onto their own lawns.
But the way it goes now is when it does drain, it does drain onto Saratoga and it does run down the road. But that's not working out. I mean, unfortunately, over the years, things have changed and the water now sheds across Saratoga. And I would think that if you want to look into that, it'd be to have, once again, to have the engineer look over your options, in which we could probably get them in here before your next meeting.
I'd like to see that happen. I mean, I think if that whole section, I mean, it's not affecting my house or anything. It's not affecting Clark Avenue or Simpson, but it's certainly affecting Saratoga.
It's affecting
Road.
that intersection in Saratoga.
Yeah, yeah, and you can go down there in the wintertime and it's all
Yeah, when we had trouble.
icy and wet.
When it was all icy, this is part of the cause.
Yeah, anytime you have a severe meltdown or a rain event,
Yeah.
a heavy rain event in the snow, you get the
That
flood.
freezes down.
Then in the summer, if you get a heavy rain event, you get the flooding.
So if we can get somebody to look at that, at least give us the other thing I was asked to bring up is, what's going on with the 33 acres of property up behind the fire?
Still in a holding pattern. We talked to Andy, and he says his attorney, do you wanna?
No, since I last reported, I haven't had any contact with anybody. So it looks like there are no contracts active with respect to the 33 acres.
Is there an appraisal? Didn't we ask for an appraisal?
We did, but
Andy does not have the deed right now.
Yeah.
He said April 15th, they were supposed to turn back his deed, that his attorney in Utah wrote a letter to the developer's attorney. This is what Andy said. And that he was waiting for them to return his deed.
yeah, I don't want to spend any.
Copied on anything.
I don't want to spend any village money until I have a piece of paper in my hand saying you have title to this land, so that Vamico does not have clear access.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get in an argument over, whether they have access or not.
Yeah, and I guess the point that was made to me, and I guess and you hear it from some people, is that, this may be an opportunity for us, and it could go by very quickly if somebody comes in there with a proposal and somebody cuts a deal, and all of a sudden we're going to find another development, and maybe, and then it'll be too late to scream about it. So I just bringing it up, people would think about. You can always change the RV zoning. Simple deal. Okay, thank you.
It's part of the comprehensive plan, isn't it? Process. Heidi?
No.
Oh? Yeah.
Nothing for me.
Public comment period. Lisa? Tina?
Tina Albier, 39 Burlington. With regards to the road situation and the large potholes in some areas, I know Johnny said he has a plan for everything. I would just ask that all of the inroads leading to the auditorium, with the upcoming auditorium season starting, kind of maybe, if possible, be pushed to the top, because appearances are a lot. We're trying to bring more people in for more events, and appearances are a lot.
Oh, Jim.
I'm not complaining, but can we have the village board meetings on the same night as we usually do?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure there was some reason why you changed them around, but it's like try to schedule ahead of time to have free time to come, and when they get moved, it kind of messes with my schedule.
I will take ownership for that because my son has lacrosse games on Wednesday nights
Okay.
last month and tomorrow night. But his season will be over in 3 weeks, so that will be it. And I appreciate your cooperation and working with us on that. Adrian.
Hi, so piggybacking on a prior conversation around tents and tables and all that kind of stuff, so, there's village residents who are getting married, and I invited them to come, because it was sort of open-ended question, again, I'm sort of just asking, I guess on behalf of them. So, there are the round tables in the auditorium. There are a handful of those long wooden tables that are used for, you know, potluck, night of illumination, you know, barbecue, blah, blah, blah. And then there are tables here. So I don't know if those are Willis tables or those are community. Those are Willis. Okay. So I guess my general question is around if someone is asking to use our space, we do have tables, chairs. Are we not in the business of renting them out? What's that conversation so that in the very beginning I can say, okay, you're gonna rent the space, but that's what you get, right? Is that fair, Kim?
Well,
Based on our
I
conversation?
think there's a
Okay.
substantive difference between putting up a tent, having a village crew put up a tent and take it down, and if John wants to use the community room, using the tables, with him setting them up and taking them down. So,
I guess what I'm saying is there's a rental fee for the auditorium. They get the auditorium space. There is also stuff and people who live here who are getting married here.
Yeah.
There are 2 couples actually getting married in the auditorium in October. So, but one is asked around chairs and tables. If that's not included and we're not doing that, I think there just needs to be, I don't know, something written about that, just to, you know what I mean? Because there's an expectation for people who live here, because they're like, oh, because we use them for this and that and the other
no,
thing.
my initial.
Or who people don't know. So I just wanna know, like, if someone says, I'm gonna rent the auditorium, what's included?
Yeah, the tables and chairs were not included in rentals in the past.
So it's not in that form, but there's a question being asked about that, so I just.
Is the village inclined to rent them?
Are they-
Inclined to rent them or not
Are they
rent them?
stored?
Or if they wanted the big tent, could they pay for the big tent?
Then I don't, that's not
So
the
I'm
path
just
I wanna
asking,
go down.
so there's something written down that yes, no, yes.
Are the tables owned by different people? Different groups?
Willis owns some.
I know
and
Willis
Village owns
owns some. I do know that there have been times in the past when organizations that were using the auditorium were allowed to use tables, or have been, but they've been asked to be, they were required to be responsible for them. If something broke, they'd have to fix it.
Who's that?
Not the village.
Well, it might have been
Wireless
Wireless.
has done that. Wireless has done that.
Yeah, Wireless has done that,
So
which is,
why not?
No, are they stored in the auditorium?
Yes.
Yes.
And they're taking up a lot of room.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Why not?
I don't personally see a problem, like, that shouldn't be included with the rental.
I'm not saying included, but if they wanna use them, is there a reason?
Well, then you
But
can
if
figure-
we're charging for them, we're in the
Yeah.
competition, we're in competition with United Rentals or, you know, Clifton Park Rental, and municipalities being in competition with private businesses is a touchy subject.
So all this comes down to